Shocking showdown. Politicians trapped ignoring Canadians' charter rights. In the fraught aftermath of Canada's April 28, 2025 snap federal election, the nation finds itself gripped by a fierce, urgent clash over the boundaries of free expression, public safety, and ideological tolerance. What initially appeared as a straightforward political controversy has morphed into a deeply symbolic test of Canada's democratic foundations. At the center of this showdown stands American Christian worship leader Sean Feucht, whose highly politicized, populist-tinged religious gatherings were systematically canceled in 8 cities, including Halifax, Quebec City, Abbotsford, Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, and Vancouver, each citing safety concerns and unsuitable conduct as justification for permit revocations. Despite being framed as religious services, many Canadians viewed Feucht's events as politically mobilizing rallies, disguised as worship, with messaging promoting conservative viewpoints on sexuality, gender identity, and U.S. political divisions. Critics warned these events could inflame existing social tensions by explicitly or implicitly endorsing exclusionary views. At the same time, defenders of free expression and religious liberty sounded the alarm. Silencing someone because their ideas are unpopular risks driving those ideas into echo chambers and magnifying their appeal. A particularly dramatic flashpoint occurred when a Montreal church decided to defy the city's ban and host Feucht in its sanctuary. The gathering was non-ticketed and presented as wholly religious, yet the city swiftly issued a fine of $2,500, declaring that hateful or discriminatory speech, even within religious contexts, has no place in municipally funded or affiliated spaces. The move ignited an intense debate. Does the charter permit local governments to place moral restrictions on speech in public or semi-public spaces, even in the face of deeply held religious convictions? Or does it threaten the principle that free expression, even in forms that discomfort many, must be preserved, so long as it remains non-criminal and non-violent? As the controversy transcended municipal policy and escalated to a constitutional confrontation, legal scholars emerged with razor-sharp analyses. Charter specialist Josh DeHaas and longtime free speech advocate James Turk emphasized that Canadian law draws a deliberate line. While incitement to violence and hate speech targeted at protected groups fall outside protection under Section 1 of the Charter, ideological disagreement, even when offensive, unsettling, or socially divisive, is precisely the kind of expression the Charter was designed to safeguard. Their argument hinges on a foundational principle. Public spaces must remain open arenas for robust debate, no matter how discordant the views on stage. Meanwhile, the political theatrics only intensified. A Conservative MP demanded an apology from Identity and Culture Minister Stephen Guilbeault, asserting that the cancelled permits represented a flagrant affront to religious freedom. Opponents rejected the characterization, arguing that guaranteeing unfettered access to taxpayer-funded venues crosses a line. Community polling revealed deep rifts. In Abbotsford, for example, a striking 72% of residents opposed Feucht's right to perform in a public park. Social media reactions further underline the tension. Some commenters flatly asserted, freedom of expression is not the same as entitled access to publicly funded platforms, while others warned that refusing to ban offensive voices implicitly endorses them. In response to repeated municipal crackdown, Feucht turned to grassroots alternative venues. He announced a field worship event in a farmer's field near Halifax, just outside municipal jurisdiction and beyond the reach of city permit restrictions, highlighting the unresolved tension between state authority and private initiative. Whereas Parks Canada had rescinded land access, pushing Feucht and his supporters to improvise solutions, this move also underscored the determination of organizers and the limits of governmental control over public assembly. Into this cultural and constitutional maelstrom stepped Prime Minister Mark Carney, whose campaign had been threaded with promises to defend civil liberties, rejuvenate local journalism, and preserve public forums as inclusive spaces for all viewpoints. His inaugural speeches invoked Canada's pluralist values and the imperative of civil discourse. Now, however, Carney confronts a critical test of credibility. Will he stand by those principles, even when they underwrite the voices he publicly rebukes, Or will he cave to pressure from urban mayors, vocal advocacy groups, and fractured public opinion? The answer may well shape the future of charter jurisprudence and the limits of governmental intervention in peaceful expression. Just as this national drama was reaching fever pitch, the political arena turned again to the future of tech regulation. Bill C-63, the controversial Online Harms Act, had already collapsed under parliamentary prorogation, dead in the water before it could ever be fully vetted. Yet the debate survived: how to regulate harmful content without chilling legitimate dissent. Conservative opposition leader Pierre Poilievre seized the moment, offering a Free Speech Act to repeal streaming regulations and curb hate speech legislation. His rhetoric, framing regulation as censorship, drew cheers from civil liberties advocates and derision from anti-hate proponents. Once again, Canada stands at a divergence, protecting citizens from harm or preserving the unmitigated exchange of ideas. Overlaying these flashpoints is an even bigger imbroglio. First Nations leaders, already wary of Carney's Fast-Track Building Canada Act touted to accelerate infrastructure development, have walked out of federal consultations in protest, arguing that Indigenous voices remain sidelined in decisions that directly impact their lands and rights. The confidence in Carney's rhetoric of inclusive nation-building erodes as Indigenous communities label the consultation process as superficial at best, extractive at worst. What began as a debate over one speaker's access to municipal stages has rippled outward, touching questions of self-determination, reconciliation, and the degree to which governments truly listen. At core, the challenge is whether Canada's public spaces, parks, concert halls, city-owned auditoriums, even sidewalks, are truly public, belonging to everyone, irrespective of content or ideology, as Section 2 of the Charter demands, protecting freedoms of expression, religion, and assembly. Or whether, under the guise of communal safety or social harmony, governments are empowered to quietly suppress voices they or their electorates find distasteful. This moment is more than political drama. It's a test of how much dissent our democracy can bear without fear or outrage eroding its core. Whether Sean Feucht is praised, rejected, or ignored, the real issue is precedent. Once exclusion takes hold, it can quietly narrow public discourse to only approved voices. Canada's promise and Carney's challenge is to protect charter ideals so that free expression and vibrant debate survive, even when they offend.